Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready? Are you ready? This is the main event of the evening.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go. Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. Thank you so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to this podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. Our numbers are going up, so we know that you're sharing this with those that might struggle with addictions, mental health, or just maybe a little encouragement to try and get things moving in a direction that will show some positive changes in life. Hey, as always, check out our website, addict2athlete.org. You're going to find all kinds of information on there, our upcoming events. And right now, registration is open for our 2023 proxy run. It's going to be held on September 9th in Spanish Fork, Utah. This is a chance for you to come out and run with the team, maybe run for someone that may have lost their battle to addiction or mental health, and run proxy for them, using your legs to remember them in every step. So check that out. It's on our website, addict2athlete.org, underneath our racing events. Athletes, I'm excited today. I love it when we get guests in studio, and it's one of the best parts about this is being able to, share a little bit of recovery, a little bit of motivation and strength. And I think today is going to be a great topic for all of you that have had a fear in life that's maybe kept you away from doing things that seem super scary. And I like to talk about the difference between fear and faith being the same thing with different results. And we're going to dive into this literally and figuratively today. I got Leon here from Skydive The Wasatch, and this is a company down in Nephi, Utah, that for the last 3 or 4 years, our coach out in the Great Basin area, James Johnson, has kind of conglomerated a lot of his overcoming fear, putting anxiety where it belongs, and taking his team skydiving. And every time he does this, I kind of think he's a little bit crazy. But Leon, you are a huge part of their recovery, a huge part of Addict II Athlete's recovery. The stories that they are able to gather and literally share, throughout the year, has a huge beginning with, walking out there onto the tarmac. Brother, welcome to the podcast. We'd love for you to introduce yourself and maybe Skydive The Wasatch. And we'll get into some of the principles that I really think are important for some of these folks who are terrified of literally taking that leap. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'll be honest with you, I'm about as nervous as most of your athletes are when they come out and do the jump with us.
That is so hard to believe, man. I love it.
Bear with me here as I get comfortable in front of a mic and listen to myself in these headphones.
You got it.
But, man, it's such a pleasure to be here. I was really excited when Marissa reached out to me. So thanks for having me, for starters.
Yeah. How did you get involved with this? I'm so curious where someone like thinks, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this recreational activity, skydiving, but it must become such a passion for you that you designed your company around this. Your Skydive The Wasatch.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of take it back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
18th birthday, November 7th, 1996. My dad and I went and did a tandem skydive out in Davis, California. I got on the ground and I told my dad, I said, well, I'm not going to college. I'm going to become a professional skydiver.
You knew it right there.
And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And my dad said, no, you're going to go to college. So I wandered around for a bit. I worked in some different professions. Skydiving kind of went by the wayside for a few years, and then ended up getting back into it through a roommate that I had. He showed interest, and I said, oh yeah, no, I had fun on the first one. I'd like to go try that out. So I went out to California City, which is no longer in existence, but it was one of the biggest drop zones in the country for a number of years. I don't know if you ever remember the movie Fandango.
Absolutely.
So that was filmed there.
Okay.
Bunch of other stuff has been all filmed out there, but so I did my A license training out there, and then wandered around for a bit longer. It was just kind of a hobby, a little side thing for a while, and then in 2005, met some base jumpers, and,
man.
And that sounded pretty cool. So I was like, well, yeah, no, I'm interested in that. And I told them that I had 25 skydives, and they laughed at me and told me to go away. They said,
no cred there, huh?
They said, come back when you have 200 skydives. We'll teach you how to base jump.
Wow.
So I went back to Drop Zone in Monterey, California, Skydive Monterey Bay, and started jumping there, and then started professionally jumping in about 2006. And it's been basically what I've been doing for, ever since.
My gosh, man. So that very first experience, like you felt something that was, I guess like a pre-planned destined pursuit in life. You're just like, your toes hit the dirt and you're like, this is it. What was it about that your first time is always kind of like a memorable one, obviously, but like, dude, what did you experience in that? Because it's, Leon, it's short too, man. Like I remember thinking this is terrifying, but it's so fast, but it's so short too. You know what I'm saying? Like everything slows down, but then everything just speeds up. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What do you remember about that first one that switched that light on that says this is it?
Well, the funny part about it is I actually remember very little of the skydive.
Yeah.
And this is one that our folks that are listening will probably be able to relate to very well. I was young. I was 18. I was real excited. I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm gonna do this. And I'm sitting in the plane, and they kept asking me, oh, you nervous? You scared? I was like, no, I'm ready. Let's go.
Your frontal lobe hadn't developed yet.
Oh man, the door opened up, and it felt like I had been hit by every drug imaginable. Everything slowed down. I remember trying to walk towards the door in this kind of slow motion, just kind of fumbling along, didn't really understand what to do with my hands. I was just lost, And I remember standing in the doorway of the plane, and then I remember being on the ground.
Man.
And that's it. You watch the video of it though, man. I was just screaming, I was waving, I was talking to the camera guy.
In the moment.
Oh man, I was there, and none of it was retained. For me,
man.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. An experience like that has a profound effect on us.
Had your dad done it before?
No.
So it was his first time as well.
His first time as well. And I think he enjoyed it, but he was a little older, a little wiser, perhaps.
Yeah, again, frontal lobe developed.
Yeah, right. But about 10 years later, actually, I took him on a skydive, and as my tandem passenger, which was super fun. Got to do that, share that with him. I've actually taken everyone in my family on a skydive now.
Everyone's trusted you enough to be strapped to you and roll out of there.
Even my mom, actually, which was only just a few years ago. She finally agreed to it.
Was she the last one? She's like the holdout? I love it.
Yeah, she was like, no, it's, and she even got on the ground. She's like, well, I'm glad I did that, but it's not for me.
She's like, one and done. Yeah, brother. I can understand that. But that's the thing, though, is it puts you on this path of seeking this out to give other people that experience that you had during that time. But I'm curious, man, to get into some of the nuts and bolts of it. On Addict II Athlete, we talk a lot about the metaphors and the principles behind things. I think that there's probably like no bigger fear that people have. I mean, there's what you're doing now, public speaking, which is the number one fear. You know that.
Yeah.
But like to actually put themselves in a situation that is so unnatural, it is humanly kind of like reactive. And it's the funniest thing. I remember going scuba diving once, and that weird feeling of like, I'm not supposed to be breathing underwater. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that same thing, man, when I got into the plane, because I showed up to film the experience a couple years ago, and as I was in there, James Johnson comes over and is like, hey, my guy's not doing it, you're doing it. And I had zero time to really think about what I was doing until I was in the plane.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, everything, like you said, everything slowed down. I'm like, and I'm so dumb, I wasn't even paying attention to this safety thing because I was filming everybody. So as we tumbled out of the plane, I'm thinking, was I supposed to pull this cord? Wait, what am I? I just felt like a dangling little baby just sitting there. I'm like, I'll let him do it all.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I'm like, that you're right. That was like, what was that? Like, if you can overcome that fear, there's nothing standing in your way. What you see this all the time. What do you notice about people's fears and anxiety until it's over? Like, what do you notice?
Sorry, my thought process went to a little bit different
Go
spot,
wherever you need
which
to.
I think may still kind of come around to
Go for it.
your question. Because so early on in my skydiving career, it was about me. I was there for the sensations. I was there for the feelings. I liked the adrenaline. I liked the dopamine. I liked all the endorphins, all that stuff that our bodies kick off when we are essentially scared to death.
Yeah.
Right. And so for a bunch of years, it was about me and it was ego. Right. But that changed. That progressed over the years. And by the time you guys came around and started jumping with me, I'd been recognizing my position as a guide. And it's something that I really cherish about it, and it is why I still skydive today. Now, for me, jumping out of an airplane is therapy. It's relaxing. I'm not concerned about any of the things that are going to be happening. I'm just there managing this person that's along for the ride with us, you know. And I think of my role much more as a spiritual guide and a sitter, you know, as opposed to I'm an extreme sports athlete.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and it's really changed it. The whole dynamic for me is very different for me personally, but the reward now is getting to have the folks like that you bring down, right? And the others that come out, right? Everybody's there wondering what it is that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has preconceived notions about what's going to happen. And generally speaking, they're wrong.
Yes, they are.
Right? You know, and it's the, you know, like we watch you go through, like we're sitting on, you know, we're attached to the back of you, but we can feel you go through the, oh man, I forgot all the things I'm supposed to do right now. Am I doing it wrong?
So I'm not the only one that's done that.
No, it's 100%. It's 100%. You
Good.
know? But the change also happens, and you'll notice it most often if you watch videos of people doing a tandem skydive. There's usually about 3 to 5 seconds at the beginning from the exit out into free fall, where there's a look of just terror, panic, confusion, a number of different emotions, right? And then after about that first 3 to 5 seconds, it usually turns into smiles and recognition of, oh, this is why they're here. This is why they do this.
Oh, man.
And getting to watch that happen, getting to experience that with people and take them through that process of overcoming their expectations and their fears and their nerves is not always, but quite often a life-changing experience for people.
Yeah, you know, I love that. And listeners, I hope you can hear the passion that Leon's talking about there, because it's one of these things that until you experience it, it's hard to even describe, but you eloquently, I think, did that. And I've watched the anxiety and the fear from the moment they get strapped in and, you know, until they're walking back into the hangar, and it is night and day different. It's like, I've overcome this fear. And that was the funniest thing. I remember when James first approached me and said, we're going to do this. I thought, James, that's a lot of money for an experience. And he's like, yeah, Blue, but I really think this is going to be a big deal. I'm like, well, it's your chapter. You do it with the money that you want. I have seen people literally come back changed.
Oh,
like changed.
Absolutely.
Not like just, that was an experience, but people that are like you.
Yeah.
My life is on a different path now.
Absolutely.
So you call yourself a spiritual kind of leader, and I believe you, because up there, there's nothing but prayers.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like on that spiritual side. I mean, people get religion and spirituality mixed up all the time. What are you noticing that's kind of a spiritual thing? Because, you know, your location, first of all, is amazing. I don't know. I mean, I've only done yours, right?
Yeah.
But and you've probably been all over. But what makes your location so amazing too? Because it authentically, truly is.
It really is, and you know, and this is. I know it'll sound like a plug, but
I set it up for you because it is.
But it's and to break it down to the mechanics of what makes that spot so special is the topography. So we have the massive valley, the Nephi Valley down there, sitting on the floor. And then we have Mount Nebo right there. It's standing up 7,500 feet above the valley floor. And when we exit the aircraft, you're above all of that,
it all,
right? And you get when you get that really distinct difference between elevations that are around you, and you get to see things going by you as you're in free fall. It is something that is always amazing. I mean, I genuinely put Skydive The Wasatch and jumping there on my top 5 lists of places I've jumped. And I've jumped all over the world.
Really?
Switzerland was amazing. Norway was amazing. And all of those also have those big mountains.
Yeah.
And you're jumping into a valley next to the mountains. So it's just from a practical standpoint, it's a beautiful spot. And then you combine that with the fact that you are having we've been talking, a spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
It really just comes together as just an amazing place to be able to experience that.
Man, I love it. And I think you're right, because, you know, listeners, maybe picking back off of what Leon's saying, when you're down there on the ground and you're looking around, you have these amazing mountains on the side, and it gives you a very different perspective. I mean, you look up in the sky and you can't see where they are, and all of a sudden you see this little dot. And you're like, oh, there's the plane. And then you see the 2 little dots falling out. You're like, oh, there's the chutes, right? But it's wild when you're up there, the perspective. And I think sometimes we screw that up, even in recovery, listeners. Think about this. You know, you're down there on the ground, you're looking around, you think, I've got it all figured out. I got it all figured out. But once you get to a level where you can see more and your perspective broadens, that to me is an analogy of recovery. It's like you thought you saw everything. You thought you had everything you needed, but look how much still is out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember taking off, man, and I remember looking at I-15 thinking, I've been on that road 1,000 times, and I wish I was there right now, heading south to California. I'm going to the beach. And it was the funniest thing, man, because like as we started kind of gaining altitude and stuff, and you're right, when that door opens, it's game on. But yeah, I remember looking over at Nebo and on all that, thinking I've ridden my bike over that 1,000 times. But it was such a unique perspective. I think sometimes if we don't get out of our comfort zones, we'll never see the perspective of life, will we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the perspective change, both literally and figuratively, is one of the things that really makes it a special experience. So when I first chat with your group, you know, we would kind of sit them down in the morning, we'd give them a big group training, and we talk to them about all the other things, and I quite often will tell them, and it's I tell it to all of my students, I tell it to your group as well, but going into skydiving, we are understandably a bit nervous and a bit excited. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor that I take for that and into my life is anytime that I find myself faced with some new unknown and I find myself nervous, I ask myself, well, are you excited as well? Are you a little nervous? Are you a little excited? Well, you're about to do something amazing.
Brilliant.
And
I love it.
It holds true.
It does.
Throughout life. It's amazing. You know, and getting sober.
Yeah.
Man, that's nerve-wracking.
Absolutely
nerve-wracking, but it's exciting too,
it's exciting
right?
as
Think
well.
about the opportunities that might be available to you if you can readjust your behaviors and your mindset, and get that new perspective on what life could look like with different behaviors.
See, and I love that, listeners. Again, it's sometimes we get so overwhelmed with the what is that we kind of forget that there's experiences and emotions and feelings and, you know, all kinds of stuff going on. And a lot of times we mislabel that stuff. Yeah. Like you said, we will mislabel fear as excitement.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't really ever think I slow down to break it down enough, but I'm glad that you've noticed that enough to kind of get people's mindsets and perspectives in check, because you could probably be up there and then get yourself in a pickle too of like, you know, getting stuck in there and not wanting to roll out or something. And you're like, hey, look, I know, you know, that to me is probably one of the hardest things too, is like, you're also a counselor and a therapist and, you know, like you said, a minister, whatever. Absolutely. You're doing all those things because, you know, you have this person to a certain degree, you're responsible. I'm curious though about some of that thing, some of the technical things. I remember the first time we came down, and I'm kind of curious what you thought of Team Addict II Athlete when James first approached you, because James is a lot of a guy, man. The guy's got energy beyond energy. And when we rolled in there, I thought, I wonder what this guy's going to think, you know, because, you know, and getting to know you and your crew and stuff and knowing that there's some similarities there and just, you know, the passion and the professionalism you guys have. I'm curious what you thought when you first saw us versus all these years later now.
Yeah, you know, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was really hoping we were going to get to talk about James, man. I love that guy.
Amazing.
He is an animal.
Yes, he is.
An absolute animal. I mean, that guy shows up first thing in the morning, and he's there yelling and screaming all day long, getting people pumped up, and he's great. And absolutely, when the first time I started interacting with him, he contacted me and was talking to me about what he wanted to do, and I was like, oh man, we got another one of those recovery groups coming out.
Eager beaver guy,
geez, here we go. And recovery is a part of my story as well. I spent about 10 years in the rooms of AA, and so I have some preconceived notions about some folks with sobriety. And I was like, okay, well, and sobriety is important to me, right? It had a big impact on my life. So I was like, well, no, I'll reach out, I'll give them a chance, and kind of see how this goes. Yeah. And man, that first year, it was fantastic. That was
special.
Fantastic.
I didn't realize how special it was. I was looking at photographs about it not too long ago, bringing cops down to jump with them. What do you think about that? Like, wow,
man, it's so great. So great to be able to put those two opposed groups together. I mean, a lot of people in recovery, they've had their ins and outs with law enforcement, and to get them both there together and be like, hey, there's shared ground here.
Right? Absolutely.
Actually, an interesting little side note here. We're going to go on a real shift here. As I mentioned when I got in this morning, I said, yeah, I'm running a little late, but you're going to love why.
Let's hear it. I love it.
So, I guess it was about 6 years ago, this gentleman was out using. He was a heroin addict and got arrested. And after he got out of jail, he ended up, somehow he got connected with us, came down, did a skydive. I don't actually remember when he came and did that first skydive. But he came down, and then, about a week ago, he reached out to me again and said, hey, I'm interested in coming down and learning how to skydive. And I said, okay, sure. So I've been teaching this guy how to skydive for the last week. He's been doing great. He's moving his way through it. And when in passing, he'd mentioned it. He's like, oh, I don't drink. And then I knew this podcast was coming up. So I said, oh, hey, by the way, do you not drink because you're sober, or is it, what's your reasons for it? And he opened up to me a little bit about it, just literally this morning, telling me like, oh yeah, I was a heroin addict, recovered, and now I'm sober. And I said, oh, wow, fantastic. I was like, have you ever heard of Addict II Athlete? And he's like, oh, yeah, I know them real well. I know Skylar and Blu for sure.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And I said, well, do you mind if I share a little bit about you on this podcast today? He said, oh, yeah, no, absolutely. His name's Ivan. I don't know if you remember him or not. But
oh, yeah.
But yeah, man, he jumped out of a plane this morning with me at 8 o'clock.
Nice.
I went off to work, and I came up here to do the podcast.
You've already taken the dive today, you guys. Yeah, Ivan, congratulations, brother. It's good to hear. That's the interesting thing about this too, is that everyone knows someone. And, you could have taken the route of I don't have time, or, maybe, go get, like you said, come back to me when you have such and such days or whatever. But you're like, all right, if you're serious, then all you have to do is show up.
Yep.
And that's what it's about, right?
Absolutely.
Showing up. I love it. And so I'm glad that James didn't scare you away, because we've been down there. I think we've done it, 3 times?
4 years now.
4 years now.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting bigger each year. I mean, we're almost going to have to spill into a weekend here.
I look forward to it, man.
I think this next year it's probably going to happen. But that's the thing is I love the fact that when I was down there the very first time, I remember filming your guy that was packing the chutes. And it seemed like he didn't take a break the whole day. And I remember being like, I wonder if in the afternoon, homeboy's going to start getting a little tired and miss. But every time he was on point. Yeah. And talk about packing the chute. It's not, you don't just stuff it in there. There's a method to it. I'm curious about that, because I'm like, don't anyone talk to him. You leave him alone, right? But he was singing and jiving, and it was awesome because he was on point the whole time. How critical is that step?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
everything.
It's pretty important. Yeah, you want to make sure you got a good pack job for sure. And you're talking about Greg. He's one of my longest standing team members.
I love it.
And he's a machine. That guy can just crank out some pack jobs, and they are always good.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, sometimes he'll take a break, go on vacation or whatever, and we'll bring in a fill-in packer. And everybody's like, oh, man, where's Greg? Where's Greg's pack jobs? We want Greg's pack jobs. because not only does he make them work, which is important, but the biggest nuances in packing the parachute is the quality of the opening. So there's quite a bit of variety in the openings. You can get a real snapper that's not very comfortable, and
wakes you up a little bit.
Yeah, and you'll remember those ones. But yeah, Greg is. I think he's been in the skydiving industry for probably coming up on 30 years now.
Wow.
He really knows his stuff and is really dedicated to his craft of being a good packer.
In fact, the hard part about it is I filmed him a bunch of times that year, and I couldn't tell which position like the film should be, because every time I filmed him, he was doing pretty much the exact same thing. So I had to get down into like the mechanics of it to find out what the time slots were. I'm like, have I seen this part? Yeah, does it make sense? Because they were always on point, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I bet you if we can get him like a 4-screen thing and they'd all be on point. Right, it's like, wow. But I love that too. The thought of again, going up tandem and being able to do it with someone. And then eventually, after you get so many jumps, and I'd love to know what that is, you go by yourself. What is that transition like? Because there's safety in having someone behind you, man. And I know it's the same way in recovery. We come in and we get these the sober support systems. Maybe we get a sponsor, or on Team Addict II Athlete, you get maybe a trainer, and you've got this team. Going alone your first time has to be a little interesting too. Like, this is me now. Like, I have every tool I have. I've learned up to this point, but now it's on me. It's like when someone graduates treatment, or they're going out in the real world after having some help with the recovery. All of a sudden, you're on your own. What's that little like switch like?
Yeah, so it's great that you bring that up, because the tandem experience, it gives you physiologically all the endorphins and dopamine and adrenaline that makes skydiving what a special thing that it is, right? And it gives it to you in a controlled environment with a good guide that's there to, as you said, we're the therapists there, kind of sitting there talking them through it. And everybody needs a little something different, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's there for a roller coaster ride. Not everybody's there for a real touchy-feely, mellow thing, right? Some people want the roller coaster, right? And so we're kind of feeling each student out, right? And going through that with the tandem. But then once they decide, like, okay, I'd like to learn how to do this on my own, we still put them under supervision, right? And Ivan, who we were talking about earlier, right? He's done a couple of tandems, and then he came in, he started doing the solo training. And the thing that's interesting now is that, so you're still supervised, you still have your guide with you, and we're there to make sure that when you don't do it quite right, you're still going to be okay, right? But the new process now is you are there dealing with all of that stuff, all the mental stuff that's going on, and then trying to perform in that setting.
Yeah.
And you're going to stumble, right? Just like in recovery, right? Not everybody gets sober the first time.
No.
Right? But it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay as long as you're there and you got your support group, you got your people, you got your coaches, you got your sponsors, whatever it is that you need, to kind of help guide you along and say, like, okay, like, what did you do right?
There you go. Thank you for pointing that out. It's not what you do wrong. It's, well, let's look at what you did right.
Yeah.
I love that mindset.
Yeah. And then there's a series of jumps. Usually it takes people about 5 to 10 jumps to get to the point where we talk about the lights come on. And I'm sure you've seen this with the folks that come through here in recovery, right? You first come into sobriety and you're a raw nerve, man. You don't know what's going on. You don't know up from down. You're just like, I don't know. Tell me where to go. Tell me where do I need to be? Okay, I'm here. And they're stumbling along. You go, okay, well, yeah, but what did you do? What did you do right today? What was good about that jump? What was good about this day? And once you cover that, then you say, okay, what would we like to change? What can we improve on?
Brilliant.
And what is the thing we're going to focus on now? And so the solo training is very much about guiding people through that. Finding a moment of serenity in the chaos of jumping out of an airplane, or the moment of chaos in life, right?
Absolutely.
Life's pretty chaotic.
One and the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Skydiving truly is it's a metaphor for life. The changes that I've seen in people that come through, whether it's just a tandem or going on to be a solo skydiver, is just absolutely phenomenal. And it carries over into their everyday lives.
Man. And that's the thing too, is like I said, it seems like it takes forever, but it's so fast. It's got to be kind of one of those things, I think, that while you're in it, you're in the moment. You're not thinking about anything else. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of it too, is very rarely do we ever get to just be with ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when everything's done, when the chute opens and all that, and you're just there, there's that serenity of just like, look at this. Like that's got to be intense too, because not a lot of people put themselves in situations to just be. We're always distracted by the phones, by the computers, by the relationships, all kinds of stuff. When you're there, I would imagine when you're solo diving, once the chute opens and stuff, you just get that like, wow. You're not thinking about like, when I land, I have to go do payroll, or I've got to go do fuel receipts. You don't think about that kind of stuff, I'd imagine. You're just in the moment, aren't you?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, skydiving is it's a very good way to get into that flow state, right? Where we have, for the next, 3 to 5 minutes, we have to not die. Yeah. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's when we get that very linear focus, it helps kind of calm our brains, calm our minds. I mean, for me now, like I find myself, if I go a couple weeks without a skydive, I start getting a little antsy.
You have a little withdrawal, do you?
Yeah, no, I got to get back out there and go get into my space,
That is awesome. I think sometimes we forget about that kind of stuff too. I think we forget that those things aren't there as addictions or vices. They're there as helpmates and kind of like reset buttons. It's the same thing. I used to get this all the time when I first started Addict II Athlete. People would say, oh, you're just going to get them addicted to the gym or to working out or to running. I'm like, no, but if it did become addiction, it'd be much better on them than it would be going out trying to get heroin. I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
No one's ever been thrown in jail for going running at 5 a.m. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know you remember, I believe it's Greg and Cheyenne.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He always comes with his Kill Your Local Heroin Dealer t-shirt on.
Yep.
I love that shirt. Love that man. Love his daughter. They're amazing people.
They're in tune. Yeah.
Man, what a story, man. That guy's been through the ringer. And to see him come back every year is one of my favorite parts of having you guys down. Yeah. I love that, man.
And they always go last for some reason, too. Wow.
Now I feel like it's part of the
whole experience.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like we can't be like when the fat lady sings, it's not over until they jump, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're spot on. And that's the fun thing too, man, is I remember our very first year, you pulled out all the stops, and I remember getting down there and watching you jump with the flag. That was kind of unreal because I'd never seen that before. Oh, cool. That was pretty wild. And, that can't be easy either. I mean, that's a big flag you're jumping with. And I'm curious, tell me a little bit about that, because that's an eye opener. And I think have you done it in like other places? I'm sure you've done it in like stadiums and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that like, trying to hit a target that's that teeny with all that wind and weight ratio and all? I mean, how in the world do you navigate that?
Practice.
Yeah. You had some ugly ones then, huh?
Oh yeah. I have missed a rodeo or two.
Yeah. Land in the bull pit. You're like,
oh yeah. Well, we tried to decide high, and we're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna go find a better spot.
Nice.
Try to get out of there, get clear. But yeah, it's a super fun.
How do you control it, man? I'm so curious. I mean, I remember the guys with the Greg. You said,
yeah.
Pulling the things, but I do not understand the mechanics of that, because again, I remember watching Felix Baumgartner try to jump, remember, out of the plane, and he was trying to break that with a balloon. And I'll never forget that, because I've used his experience as an analogy for recovery, because I read this interview he had where he was way up there in the stratosphere, and wasn't he trying to break the longest free fall or fastest free fall or something like that?
Yeah, I think he was going for highest.
And I remember him saying that one of the hardest things was trying to get himself out the door and lean forward, because there's no resistance up there.
Right.
And I remember him saying that as soon as he leaned forward just a little bit, he was 100% committed.
Yeah.
He couldn't be like, oh no, I'm just kidding. Because there was no resistance. And I thought, I had to wrap my head around that. and he's falling, and as you can see him on camera, it's head over butt, butt over head, left, right, all over, and he's completely tumbling.
Oh yeah.
Until he hits the upper atmosphere where he starts getting the friction, and then he starts getting stable, but he's dropping like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then he hits the parachute, and then he gains control, and he lands perfectly. And I remember thinking, that's so much like addiction. You're tumbling through space and time.
Right.
You hit some friction, you slow down a little bit, but it's not until that canopy opens that you're like, now I've really got control. Even though he can control himself, to get into position so he's not like tumbling.
Yeah.
That's always boggled my mind. But how is the mechanics of like driving the thing? I don't get it, because if you're jumping out of a plane trying to hit a stadium, that blows my mind that you can nail that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it comes back to repetition.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you start
on the reps.
Start with a big target, and and again, man, the analogies between skydiving and recovery and life are just everywhere.
Yeah.
And you are going to screw up recovery. Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's okay.
Absolutely.
Because sober, we quite often, a lot of people when they first get sober, like turn into jerks.
Yeah.
They're
short and snotty.
Yeah, they're just not good people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're trying to navigate this new thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in the case of the flag, right? You have to recognize, like, okay, well, I've got this new thing that's with me that's creating a whole bunch more drag.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to change my flight profile. I have these expectations of where I'm going to be able to land from my previous jumps.
Right.
And those expectations are not going to be met.
Mm-hmm. And if you try to force it, it's not going to work, is it?
Not going to happen.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, through practice and repetition, you figure out what your new path is, what your new inputs, and what you're going to get from new inputs. And you figure out, okay, well, this one didn't work. Okay, well, let's try something else.
Try this one.
Okay, well, that worked. I like that one. I got a good response out of that input.
I love it.
And yeah, man, like I said, it's one and one for the metaphors between what we're doing and what you're doing.
It's so funny to watch. Like, you're down there on a 100-yard football field, and it looks huge. It's 100 yards. But then I've seen people from their head cams and stuff jump out, and it like this little speck down there, and I'm like, I do not get it. But you're right. It's all in the reps.
Yeah.
I mean, even watching you guys land, like nail it, in that little round spot in the middle of your runways is incredible to me, because I'm like, there's so much out there, but like you're always in control to that point. And if something goes wrong, well, then you use your tools that you've learned in all the reps you've done, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
I've watched people on YouTube and stuff that have come under some distress and they've had some problems. And they don't panic. And I'm thinking, I've watched this so many times where people have, because James sent me a few, like, watch this. I'm like, don't send this before I'm going down there to jump. What are you, out of your mind? And like, it was wild, because he said, don't look at the scariness of it. Look how in control they are. And that's what I'm like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Some scary things are happening, and I know it's not that common, but like, I remember watching this one guy who's falling, and he got all tangled up and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, that's it for me. But the guy was like so in control, didn't panic, ground's coming up, untwists it, and he made it just fine.
Yeah.
I've watched other ones where they've had to like let go of that parachute and get the reserve. And I'm like, that is mind-boggling that even in that kind of trauma, like if you stay cool, you have a heck of a better shot than panicking. What's that going to do?
Right.
That to me is amazing, to be able to be that in tune and in control. And you, like you said, it's got to be because of the reps, right? It's got to be because of the training.
Certainly that. And there's a couple of things, I guess, actually, that I kind of want to talk about so mindset, right?
Yeah.
Mindset is huge, right? When we're going in, and as I've been talking with quite a bit with Ivan in the last couple of days, we're practicing on the ground, we're doing the ground training, and then we're getting ready to go. And I say, hey, smile.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah.
Oh,
right.
oh yeah.
Okay.
It's all smile.
Because smiling is a physical action that we can take, and it changes our interior. It changes our brains. It changes the way we operate. And when we find ourselves in a scary situation, we start thinking differently. And if we can take a physical action like smiling and breathing, really focusing on that, that's not necessarily going to solve your problem right away,
No.
but it's going to change your mindset.
100%.
And all of a sudden, once you have that positive mindset of smiling and breathing and focusing on just getting your body in check, then all of a sudden you're going to have new ideas. They're going to be better ideas. They're going to be good ideas, and you're going to be able to start thinking about what your next step's going to be in a better frame.
I love that, man. And that, again, boils down to when James approached me and he's like, you're doing this. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. Rob, you know Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Love Rob.
Yeah.
Rob walks up to me and he's like, Coach, what are you afraid of? And I'm like, I guess really nothing. Like, what am I afraid of? And I'm like, I trust the process. I trust, you guys know what you're doing. And I'm like, so what am I really afraid of? Like, I wonder about like how much of that is just like pre-programmed fear because it's not normal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I remember that, and that mindset shifted when he said that, like, what are you really afraid of? And I'm like, and he didn't say it like cocky or snotty. He was like being serious. I thought, they're just hamming it up. But I'm like, you're kind of right, Rob. Like, what am I afraid of? And then when I got in the plane, I was a little bit nervous and all that, but then it was over. And I'm like, that was amazing. Like, and it was kind of cool, Leon, for like the next like week, I was just on this different mindset of like, I just did that, man. Yeah. My kids came down and watched and they're like, holy crap, and so I don't know. I think it's kind of amazing, and not to make it a plug, but I want you to, because I really believe in your team and what you got going. Tell the listeners, because you didn't realize this, but we're running out of time. See, it goes by faster than you think. Tell the listeners a little bit about how they can find you, what you offer, and when's the best time to do all this, to come down and see what you guys are doing.
So at skydivethewasatch.com. That's our website. You can hop on there. You can book directly. You can see our whole calendar. We're open 7 days a week. You pick a time slot, and we'll be there. That
is awesome. And you know what? I thought, I really did think this is going to be like a super expensive thing. It's not.
No,
it's really not.
I mean, you think about how much a ride in an airplane is going to cost you. If you wanted to go fly around the mountains near Provo in a tiny little airplane. Yep. You're going to be paying a lot more than the $270 we're charging for.
Absolutely. And it's an experience. And the thing is about it, is like, again, you pay for all kinds of other things that don't last as long. And the neat part about that too is that, I know you're getting like, again, one of the most beautiful experiences. But then listeners, if you're with Team Addict Athlete, watch out for our posts, because we're going to be doing this again. It's become a tradition. And again, it will probably become a festival one of these days, because we're pushing the limits on how many you can do. I was blown away again at your team. I mean, do you know what the number of jumps we made? Like one of the highest ones?
40.
40.
Yeah, we did 40 in a day, which is actually that's the most we've ever done at my facility.
That's incredible.
In a day. And it was you guys. It was actually you guys year one. Yeah.
That was the biggest one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, we got to get at least 42 this next year, you guys, because we got to push these guys a little bit. But that's the thing, though, is up and down, up and down. I mean, even with the weather, sometimes you get the wind out there and stuff. And I love that too, because it makes everyone just kind of like breathe. It's like, we got to go. Yeah. It makes them enjoy that a little bit more. But your pilots are fantastic. Again, it was kind of a treat this last time with the helicopter. That was kind of cool. Marissa got to ride in it. Max got to ride in it. I know you don't offer that all the time, but that was kind of a cool little bonus.
Yeah. That's a friend of mine. Happens to own a helicopter, and he was cruising through the area, and it just lined up. It was really just a fortuitous moment for us all, and we love jumping out of any new aircraft we can get. So we were on board with it, and a couple of you all took advantage. And man, jumping out of helicopters is super fun.
It's a lot different, I would imagine, to a certain degree, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The mechanics of it are significantly different. You don't have the airspeed of the airplane. The helicopter is almost in a hover when you're leaving. Yeah. You're not really moving. It's a little bit quieter, actually.
Right.
They are a little bit more expensive to operate.
I would imagine.
So the price of jumping out of a helicopter is a little bit higher. But if anybody wanted to do that, they just have to ask for it.
Ask for it beforehand,
and have the bankroll.
That is awesome.
We'll happily throw them out of a helicopter.
That is awesome. I love that. But again, you don't want to wrap us up too fast, because I got this question. Sure. Did you ever end up base jumping then?
Oh yeah. No, I still
Dude.
base jump.
Oh my gosh.
Base jumping's great.
One of our guys who's hopefully going to come up this next year, his name's Kendall. He just walked across America. He started in Florida, walked across all the way across. He finished, I think it was last May, April or May, and he finished. But now he's walking from Washington all the way down, to San Diego. And when he came through Utah, did a tandem base jump.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, that is the most insane thing. I'm like, I watched their video and I'm like, no thanks, man. I'd rather out of a plane a million times, because I didn't know that was even a thing.
Yeah, for
Base
sure.
jumping's a whole different breed of like, let's go, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's right now.
Yeah, and the margin for error is a little bit narrower.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely it's an experienced jumper activity, right? And
That's why they're like, come back when you have this many.
Yeah, and I mean, even at that, I mean, I was still very green. But yeah, I mean, base jumping's phenomenal. It's super fun. It's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Skydiving is something that you can participate in for a long time with relatively low risk.
Yeah.
Base jumping, you get into that and you need to go into it with the understanding that you and or your friends are going to die.
Yeah.
And
I've had acquaintances that have passed because of it. Yeah. And some people are like, oh, what a waste. But I'm like, but is it though? I mean, again, the passion and what they're doing, I mean, people get hurt all the time. But I think that when we start allowing life challenges to limit what we can do, I think we need to take a serious look at what we're here for. I mean, obviously don't put yourself in risky situations, but also like, we got to live. We've got to go out and experience things. I mean, when we get too protective about ourselves, our recovery or whatnot, I mean, that's why I think sometimes it stinks when people get so stuck in certain programs or mindsets where it limits their freedom. Freedom's a scary thing with people in recovery. Everyone wants security. I want to make sure that everything operates well. I want to make sure that everything's fine. But if we try to reach maximum security, that sounds an awful lot like prison to me.
Right.
Don't you think?
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, nobody gets out alive.
No, yeah, none of us make it out of this life alive. But you will if you come down to Skydive The Wasatch, guys. Watch out for Team Addict II Athlete. We're going to be doing this again. But you know what? Don't wait for us. Go do it now. Check them out. We'll put the links in the show description. But yeah, you made it, man. And that wasn't even that bad, was it?
that was very enjoyable.
People are going to be like, let's get that guy back in the studio. But check out our website too, guys. We'll post also our videos that we have. We've conglomerated quite a bit of footage that we can use to show you kind of what happens down there at Skydive The Wasatch. It's a beautiful place, beautiful location. And your dog did fantastic. What's Pooch's name?
Oh yeah, this is Carl down here. He's
Carl.
He just needs to be close to my feet, and and he's happy.
We've seen him out there at the airport.
But yeah, and I would say anybody, even if they don't come down with you guys for the big event, anybody comes down and references Addict II Athlete, we'll throw $50 off.
There you go.
Come on down.
See, that way you guys can get the goggles. Go get it. That's the best part.
Absolutely.
Listeners, you've been well fed. Continue to do all that you do. Please continue to watch that website for all of our upcoming events. Register for that upcoming 5K. And then, let's get you guys in the sky and see what life is really made of. And until then, turn your mess into your message. You did it, man.
Thank you so much for that.